Welcome to our webinar on cyber insurance. I'd like to welcome Greg Hansen. He's the Director of Professional Risks at Austbrokers Countrywide. Great to have you here today, Greg.
Hi, David. Great to be here. Pleasure to attend the webinar all about cyber.
Yeah, no, perfect. I appreciate you obviously giving the time here. Look, before we jump into cyber insurance specifically, I'd like to just touch upon our partnership. Greg, you and I have known each other for many years, of course, from the recruitment of insurance professionals via my recruitment agency, Hooker and Hayden. And I understand your business well. But for the audience, can you tell me a little bit about Austbrokers Countrywide services? In particular, those that are of interest to recruitment agencies and also your experience working with recruitment agencies.
Yep, so just start a little bit about me. My background, I used to work with professional indemnity insurers who insured recruitment agencies. So where that was a good background for me, because it gave me a bit of a look and a bit of experience at types of claims that recruitment agencies had in terms of professional negligence and or cyber insurance claims. Then I jumped the fence and became a insurance broker. That my current firm, Austbrokers Countrywide, we specialise in doing professional consulting firms. So we have quite a lot of recruitment firms on the books and looking after their professional indemnity insurance, their public liability insurance and their cyber insurance. So what we tend to call sort of professional exposures.
Fantastic. No, that's great. Thanks for that. And for the content today, you and I obviously discussed what we could be talking about, and we agree there's probably too much relatable recruitment content to fit into one 15-minute segment. So we'll probably have to do another one, which would be good. But yeah, we both sort of agreed as a hot topic, cyber insurance was the way to go with this initial meeting. So I guess moving into the cyber insurance, what is it and what are some of the common events that may occur that a policy will respond to?
Yeah, I suppose it's a hot topic at the moment, isn't it? You can't really open a newspaper these days without some sort of cyber event occurring. The big sort of published ones of late, you know, you've had Medibank and you've had Latitude and you've had Optus that have had sort of major breaches to their databases, which brings this issue to a forefront. I think a good comment, a good place to start is what's the scale of this problem? And it's huge. I mean, think of the entire global drug trade and the billions of dollars involved in that. And the cost of cyber events is bigger than that. So we're talking about a cyber event is anything from the well-known ones we've seen in the papers, which is ransomware. So a hacker locks you out of your system, sends you a note and says, if you want access, pay us a ransom, which was like that Optus Medibank type scenario. And they've become more and more common. The cyber events that I suppose we started to see first were more all around these sort of privacy breaches. And it was getting access to databases and stealing data. And common, that was often even just medical records and things like that, because it was seen to be sensitive. So when we deal with a lot of recruitment agencies, they'll say to us, well, we don't sort of see ourselves as a target. But what we've actually seen is a real trend towards professional consultancy type firms, whether that is financial planners or accountants or architects or insurance brokers or recruitment firms. The hackers quite like targeting recruiting consulting firms because A, often they're profitable businesses. B, they're often prepared to pay a ransom just to get quick access back to their data. And they're sensitive to that professional reputation or damage type scenario. If someone's got their data and or contacting their clients, well, that sort of can be a severe impact on their business. So it's certainly recruitment professional services where we've seen a dramatic rise in cyber events. But when I talk about cyber events, it's not just that I've locked you out of your system and I've demanded a ransom. They're the ones you see, I suppose, on the TV or in the media. Often, which is on the screen there, theft of client funds. It can almost be as simple as someone within your firm's been tricked to click on a link that's given access to someone into your system. What they often do nowadays is they'll sit inside your system for several months. So they'll have access to your email. They'll sit there for 2 or 3 months, and then I'll notice that David's sort of dealing with a supplier, and there's an invoice in your email that you need to pay, particularly if it's a chunky invoice. They're quite good at pulling that email out, changing the bank details, putting that email back into your system, and those sorts of things which can cause theft of funds. They're becoming more sophisticated and harder to watch and to monitor and to keep track of. So it's certainly probably from our insurance brokerage, it's become that fastest growing area of claims compared to any other product line.
Yeah, wow. And look, I mean, I personally, as a recruitment agency owner, we hold cyber insurance. We obviously believe it's a very important aspect of, I guess, protecting our business, should an event occur. So look, I definitely recommend that if any agencies watching this who don't have it, certainly reach out and look at it as a cover that they have in place. So I guess talking about cover, what is it that the policy provides for?
Yeah, and even I suppose another comment there, David, it's funny, I used to tell recruitment entities, rather than looking at your cyber insurance first, look at your risk management first. Usually a logical start point for an insurance broker or an end business owner like yourself is, hey, let's sort of look at risk management first. And it's funny, it's some clients of mine that are experts in the IT area that have changed my mind a bit on this. I've got a client, it's an online business, but they're IT consultant cyber experts. They buy cyber insurance from us. And his comment was, he said, no, I think you need to look at them at the same time, because he said, no matter how good my security is, it's not a matter of whether someone's going to try and penetrate your system. It's a matter of not if, it's when. And we know that if the CIA over in America can get hacked, well, anybody can get hacked. So it was funny. It was a client of mine who said that, it's sort of that dual-pronged approach that, yes, risk management's important, but having a look at the cyber insurance at the same time, in his mind, is just a cost-effective way to get yourself some insurance protection, which gives you access to experts to help you out if there's a problem, as well as at the same time, looking at your risk management and what you're doing. So I suppose that's a good lead into cyber insurance, and what is it and what does it cover? What I see, which might surprise a lot of recruitment firms, probably one of the most valuable aspects of cyber insurance is that incident response capability and costs. And by that, what I mean is, if you've got a cyber event, say you're locked out of your system, the biggest problem there immediately is, what do I do? How do I get help? What's my first step? Particularly if someone's communicating with you, and usually the criminals are quite nice. They'll send you a ransom and they'll explain to you how it all works, and they want to be paid in crypto, and they'll show you some links on how to join a crypto exchange and how it all works. They're polite they just want your money, and then they generally will give you access back to the system. But the first advantage of cyber insurance cover is you've got immediate access to a panel of experts. So there's a 24/7 hotline. You ring the hotline. The first port of call is usually a legal panel firm, and they'll talk to you about what's happened. They'll try and determine what sort of data you hold, whether they think that data's been lost, whether that means you then need to report, a privacy or a data breach through to the Privacy Commissioner. And then also they will tap in forensic experts. Okay, so we recommend we need to talk to this IT firm, and they'll have a look at whether we think they're still in your system and whether we can kick them out, or whether we can get access back to your system, what we need to do. So you've just immediately got assistance from a panel of experts, whether that's IT experts or accounting forensic experts or legal advice on what you need to report or what you don't need to report. That first response aspect of the policy is excellent. And these large insurers, because they've had so many claims now, their panels are really good. They're all over it. they contact you. And how it unfolds, I'll often get asked, do they pay a ransom, for example? Well, generally they try not to if they can get access to your system or rebuild the data or recover the data, then they won't, of course. There are some scenarios where the loss of data and the longer you're locked out of your system, there's a serious business revenue interruption going on. So the smartest decision might be to pay the ransom. Mm-hmm. A good example of that, there was, I won't describe it perfectly, but it was almost the supply of petrol to about 1,500 petrol stations in the US. Some hackers had got into the software and basically cut off the pipes that supply the petrol. And they asked for $1 million ransom, which initially was declined. And then you had 15,000 petrol stations saying, well, we'll have a class action against you pretty fast.
Right.
For the financial impact of the non-supply of petrol to our petrol stations. Now, that was going to far outweigh the $1 million ransom. So pretty quickly it became sensible and logical for them the only way we can get access here is pay the ransom, get the access back, upgrade our security, and stop the financial loss of 15,000 petrol stations having a crack at us. So how it unfolds depends a bit on the circumstance, but the cyber insurance pays for that initial incident response. It pays for any costs to recover data. And sometimes, you hear of figures of $200 per record, but if you've got thousands and thousands of records, then recovering the data is a high cost. Mm-hmm. It also pays for the fine or the ransom. So it'll cover the ransom if that's what they do, cost of a ransom. It'll cover fines if you are fined under any breach of a Privacy Act or any sort of legislative breach. So the level of cover is quite broad. And the last cover where we've seen a lot of claims is the hacker may well have, say, jumped into your system, emailed your clients and sent them, Rec Alliance invoices, for example, and your clients have gone and paid those invoices. We've seen those claims against some recruitment firms. So they got into this IT system. They actually started issuing invoices to the recruitment firm's client base, and several of the clients paid it, thinking they were getting an invoice from a recruiting firm they'd been supplying staff to. So then you've got sort of, I suppose, coverage under the policy to manage your third-party clients who potentially have suffered a loss or paid those invoices. So the cover's quite broad in that sense. It covers all of those financial impacts of a cyber loss. And pricing, like for small businesses, usually it probably starts at about $1,500, somewhere around there. Yeah, you can get sort of, we might only buy a $250,000 limit. Sometimes you can get the cost closer to $1,000. But at the same time, we've had a big rise in cyber insurance, probably a good thing. We've had a big increase in number of insurers offering cyber insurance. So it's still quite a competitive market where we can fill in a proposal form, collect some questions, and we can go to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different insurers who are supplying the product. A big difference in the cover, it's worth pointing out, is if you buy cyber insurance that sort of covers the costs of downtime and getting yourself up and running again. If you buy cyber insurance that also has what we call the cyber crime, so they trick you into sending money in the wrong direction, the cyber crime always comes at a significant loading to have that included. Yeah, so it might be $1,000 for cyber insurance that just covers the downtime or the hacking event. It's $1,500 if you then want the cyber crime where, we've been tricked into sending money in the wrong direction. Because there's been a lot of claims in that area, so that tends to significantly load the premium.
Okay. And I guess going back to a couple of points you made there and around incident response, I was at an APSCO conference, which I guess is a recruitment association, probably a couple of months back now, and they actually had an expert from a PR firm who's on a panel for cyber responses. And, I guess just the way he was talking about how they operate, whatever you do, if you get a call from a reporter, pretty much just deny everything, get them to contact us. We will handle the message. Don't handle the message yourself. It was quite amazing, I guess, the different aspects of cyber cover that's out there and what's provided under that panel. So I thought that was great.
Yeah. And I think it might be on the screen there, but the media liability and all the public relations aspect of it is quite important, I suppose, for all our businesses, isn't it? So you've got an event like this and getting some guidance on how we manage this, you're right, and how we communicate it through to our customers can be quite an important aspect of that, because you certainly don't want, I suppose you get the negative publicity, depends on your business, but we've got some clients where 100% of their revenue is online product sales. So if there's a cyber scare that attaches to their brand, that's almost, a 100% downfall of their revenue, because it's an online revenue thing. The other thing I suppose that I think is worth raising is sometimes I get people who aren't sure whether they want to buy cyber insurance, and my argument is that's okay. What's a good idea is fill in the cyber insurance proposal form, because that's been put together by insurers who see lots of claims. So they're asking you a set of security questions. So my argument then is it's a great benchmark even for a small business. Often you might need your outsourced IT consulting firm to help you fill in the form, but it's a good benchmark. Are you ticking a lot of yeses on the proposal form? Are you doing a lot of those security things that the insurers are saying are important and help to protect you? And sometimes I'll get recruitment firms who'll come back and there's lots of no's down the page, but so the argument is we'll maybe circle back to your IT guys and say, well, maybe what do you think I need to do to improve my level of security first? An easy little example is multi-factor authentication, or MFA. Pretty much there isn't an insurer out there that'll insure a professional consulting firm unless they're doing MFA, right? So if I get a firm that fills in a form, it's not hard to purchase. Even if you got Microsoft 360, you pay a bit more and you get MFA. That's kind of where your phone ping, you got a password, but your phone pings and you got to put a code in to access the network. Insurers will tell all businesses that it's just become a minimum level of security that's required for everyone. So just invest in that first, even if you expect to be able to buy cyber insurance. So I suppose that even applying for it, whether you buy it or not, is a good test, I suppose, in my mind, on your own risk management practices and perhaps where you sit.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of stole my segue into the next slide of risk management there. Obviously the insurance policy responds after an event, but what can you be doing to reduce your exposure prior to? Well, you mentioned a couple of great points, obviously, just by filling out that form, getting, I guess, almost an audit of what you're already doing or what you could be doing differently. That's a great piece of advice. And then the two-factor authentication, I know you put me onto that with all my systems and all my staff systems that have access to, whether it be Rec Alliance or Hooker and Hayden systems, just as an added layer of security in it, and it's easily implemented. So I think, it's very wise for people to be undertaking that. Us recruitment agencies, most of us have our CRM within the cloud. You're talking about, the cost of recovering a record. Well, most of us have thousands of records within our databases. And of course, the nature of the records are highly sensitive, being personal details of people. It could be other checks we've done, background checks, criminal checks, things along those lines. So we've got highly sensitive information within our business. Yeah,
and I often hear it's from consulting firms that say to me, I everything's in the cloud, so I'm safe. Well, believe me, David, we've had lots of businesses where everything's in the cloud and they've lost everything. It was almost as simple as the last claim we had. Well, once they got inside the client's system, well, the passwords to the data in the cloud was there. So then they got into the cloud and then they stole it all and locked out access, encrypted it all. So then the client didn't have any access to any of their data in the cloud. So there can sometimes be a little bit of a misconception that, I don't have service, I've got everything in the cloud, so I'm safe.
Yeah.
Which leads into the bullet one, I think, on that risk management page is sort of strong passwords that are regularly changing and, two-factor authentication on all applications. When I say all, I know some firms seem to have MFA for some things, but then there's other ways you can log onto the system or other parts of the system and it's not there. It's sort of across particularly VPNs and any remote access. You certainly see a lot of, cyber crime or cyber criminals getting in through a VPN or remote access. Working from home is probably, if anything, only increased the problem, because you've got people with often their own equipment and their own networks and logging in via their own modems and at home and whatnot. So that VPN access and that MFA is really important. I know we've all it started out, I think, where the dodgy emails were easy to spot. You got the Australia Post one that said, click here, we're tracking whatever you've ordered. But avoiding clicking on links and then doing that ongoing sort of staff training is a good thing. You can buy a whole lot of, depends on how many staff you have, I suppose. But what's often encouraged is there's some sort of cyber security training, and you get these firms that'll just run video emails that your staff get that are videos, giving them tips. And then even some firms will do sort of phishing exercises inside with your staff, and then they'll report back to you and let you know how many staff clicked on links, where you can circle back and improve some education and training. So I think education and training is a good idea. The weakest link, really, sounds horrible, is staff, because you can have the best ICT security in the world, and then your staff click on a link and you've automatically given perhaps the wrong person access to your system. And it sounds really basic, ensuring you have backups and checking that the backups work. We had a claim a couple of months ago, and it was a two-person business, a building surveying firm, and he got hacked. He went to his IT supplier who said, no, that's okay. We can back everything up. And then the backups all failed. Right. It didn't work. And he didn't have cyber insurance. And he just said it was tremendous amount of hours and time just to recover all that client data and jobs and information and get all that restored and up and running again was the real sort of hurt and impact on his business. So I suppose with backups, you go and check with your IT providers that you do have backups and that it's trialed and tested, that it works. There's a final bullet point there, implement the Essential 8. If you jump online, there's quite a lot of information online. It's called the Australian Cyber Security Centre. So this stuff's freely available. And they talk about this Essential 8, and it's 8 areas of security, if that's the right word, that you need to look at. And it's everything from sort of, patch, how often you're doing patches to fix software, application control and access to your system and who's got access where, your Microsoft Office settings and how they work. Who's got privileges back again to access and backup. So all this stuff sounds basic, I think, but you can be a non-IT person like myself. I certainly wouldn't classify myself as, any expert on the IT front, but we certainly, with my business, sit down regularly with our IT consultants and just say, well, with all of this stuff, let us know, like, where are we at? What's our security level like? How often do you do backups? Is there a better way where we can give certain staff access and privilege to certain areas, and other staff don't have access to it because they don't need it. A really easy one, and this is, credit card data. I mean, don't store it unless you really need to. Most businesses now that I deal with, professional consulting firms, in the past they'd have credit cards written on forms and they'd scan into their system. The argument is, why do you need to save that stuff? Usually, you might have a web portal where your clients can pay, but that's okay. That data goes straight through to the bank usually, but don't save any credit cards on your system, definitely if you don't need to. So I think just poking your nose in and making some inquiries and having a IT consultancy firm that you use, and possibly with some firms we recommend, outside of your normal provider, go and get someone who just specialises in cybersecurity. If anyone listening to the webinar would like to be referred to some firms that just specialise in cybersecurity and looking at SME-sized businesses, they can certainly contact you, David, and me, and we can refer them on to businesses that insurers use, where there's a complimentary free chat on your business and how it works and what you do. And then these firms just specialise on cybersecurity. But I think it's certainly a good area for consulting firms to start, paying a bit more attention to, because we certainly had the rise in claims and incidents, which materially impact on the business.
Yeah, absolutely. No, look, I mean, that's been fantastic and very informative, Greg. I really appreciate that. And I guess, of course, to our audience, if you've got any insurance renewals approaching, whether it be professional indemnity, whether it be liability, or of course, cyber insurance, if you have an interest there, if you don't already have it, please do reach out to myself and, of course, Greg. And if you do talk to Greg directly, be sure to let him know you've come across the Rec Alliance business and you've seen the webinar. I'm sure he'll love the feedback. I guess any final thoughts today, Greg, before we wind up?
No, not really. I suppose that the couple of quick comments here is, with cyber insurance, even just fill in a form as a good risk management check. And outside of that, if you would like to talk to someone on an IT front, contact us, or any other insurance queries, feel free to give me a call.
Perfect. All right. Well, great. Thanks. And on that note, hope our viewers enjoyed today's webinar and found it informative.